When my husband walked into the prenatal appointment with his female assistant, I was pinned against a wall being kissed by his 18-year-old self. Honey, how can you still smell so good and be so perfect to kiss at 30? I love you so much. Why? By the way, where's the 30-year-old me? Why didn't he come pick you up from work? I helplessly pushed him away, just as 30-year-old Ryan shot me a cold, piercing look. You're keeping a boy toy and still won't divorce me. Sarah, you really disgust. Watching him leave with his secretary wrapped around his arm. 18-year-old Ryan started thrashing in my arms again. That idiot, how dare he talk to my wife like that? I swear I'll bite my tongue and kill myself right now. Make him disappear from this world completely. 18-year-old Ryan was still the same as I remembered. Dominie, and nearly impossible to calm down once he got worked up. It wasn't until I pulled out the vintage Nintendo I kept in my drawer that he finally sat down quietly. I locked him in my office and went downstairs to buy dinner. I just reached the fast food place when I heard a chilly voice behind me. 28 minutes I froze, turning around to face 30-year-old Ryan's cold expression. Why are you still here? Didn't you leave with Bella? Ryan ignored my question, just stared at me coldly. Stop playing dumb. You and that kid were alone in your office for exactly 28 minutes. By the last few words, there was a grinding, bitter edge to his voice. That boy looks pretty young. Doesn't have much stamina though. Does he? When I was his age, I could go at least 40 minutes. God, you'd need a twisted mind to understand what he was implying. I looked at Ryan with exasperation, too embarrassed to tell him it was literally his 18-year-old self, and turned to order food: beef without cilantro, vegetables with mushrooms, egg soup, and sweet and sour pork. During my order, he left coldly behind me. Sarah, everything you ordered is what I like to eat, not even trying to cater to your boy toy's tastes. Or is he just some entertainment for when you're bored, not your actual next target? Listening to his sarcastic taunts, irritation flared in my bosom. Ryan, not everyone is like you. Lining up their next relationship before their marriage is even over. Ryan choked on his words, distinctively opening his mouth. I told you I did. You used my appointment slot for her prenatal checkup. Don't tell me that wasn't intentional. I coldly cut him off, grabbing the packaged meals. Congratulations. You successfully disgusted me again. I agreed to the divorce. Monday morning at the courthouse. Don't be late. Without caring about Ryan's reaction, I walked straight and left the restaurant the moment I stepped outside. The cold winter evening. Wind hit my tear-stained face like knife blades as I frantically searched for tissues. A cup of warm milk tea, my favorite when I was a teenager, appeared in my hands. Little sleepyhead, still so absent-minded. You're crying from the cold and don't even know to put on more clothes. 18-year-old Ryan ruffled my hair and draped his coat over my shoulders. That familiar pine scent and warmth made me momentarily dizzy. So you're telling me that the 30-year-old me got his wish and married you, but didn't trust you properly? Not only did he get his female assistant pregnant, but he's also pushing you for a divorce at home. 18-year-old Ryan still had rice grains on his lips, but his eyes were full of horror. Why would I do something so stupid? Did I mutate, or did I get hit by a car and lose my memory? Did my entire brain break? I stared down, absent-minded, stirring the coffee in front of me, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. No. Accidents happen. Your body is perfectly fine. We got married right after graduation. At first, our relationship was amazing, like honey mixed with oil. Deeply in love, just like we've been for over 10 years. But everything changed completely lately after Bella showed up. Bella joined Ryan's company in its 5th year. That year, our marriage had just hit the 7-year itch. I was busy becoming the youngest attending physician, and Ryan's career was experiencing. His social obligations multiplied. Endless meetings, countless dinner parties. After I declined to accompany him to several events, Ryan got angry with me for the first time. Everyone else has a partner with them wherever they go. But even though I'm married, I'm still alone. Business partners are mocking me. Either I'm whipped or I don't make enough money for my wife to wholeheartedly support my career. Being criticized by him for the first time left me confused and hurt. After all, he always treasured me, never even raised his voice at me, let alone blamed me so directly. But no matter how much I loved him, I couldn't abandon the medical career I'd studied for over 10 years, or the achievements I'd worked so hard to build. Neither of us would apologize first. So we started a cold war. He moved out of our marital home and into a riverside penthouse closer to his office. He came home maybe a handful of times all year. Once, when I really missed Ryan, I went to his place unannounced on his birthday. But when I knocked, Bella, who answered the door in a slip dress, Mr. Wilson had too much to drink tonight. It's not convenient for him to see visitors. She seemed not to recognize who I was, just kept her head down shyly. red marks barely visible on her neck under her long hair. Could you leave a message? I'll pass it along when Mr. Wilson wakes up, fighting back tears. I handed her the gift back and said word by word. I'm Sarah, tell him to call me immediately when he wakes up. I need to talk to him, Bella softly agreed. Politely said goodbye and closed the door. But for the next two weeks, I never heard a word back from Ryan. Hearing this, 18-year-old Ryan couldn't take it anymore and smashed a glass. How is this possible? How could I mess around with another woman? This isn't real, there must be some misunderstanding. I wiped the tears from my face and took my head silently. No one wanted this to be a misunderstanding more than me, but not long after Bella got pregnant. In public and private, Ryan was incredibly attentive to her, even bringing her to my appointment slot for prenatal care. No matter how much I wanted to deceive myself, I couldn't keep lying to myself anymore. Compared to me, now 18-year-old Ryan, obviously, couldn't accept the idea of himself falling for someone else. He chucked lots of liquor like a hurt, sad puppy curled up on the sofa, crying with tears streaming down his face. How could this be possible, Sarah? How could I bear to hurt you? I sighed and leaned down to cover him with a blanket. Before I could straighten up, the front door opened. I turned around and locked eyes with 30-year-old Ryan. Sarah, you really know how to surprise. Seeing me in an intimate position with 18-year-old Ryan, 30-year-old Ryan's expression was worse than ever. Fooling around in the office wasn't enough. Now you brought him home, so inseparable. No wonder you're pushing for divorce. Hearing his unconsciously raised voice, I instinctively frowned. Keep it down. Don't wake him up, given the teenager's explosive temper. If he discovered that 30-year-old Ryan was right there, knows what chaos would break out. I just didn't want to add more trouble for myself. But my words clearly had a different meaning to Ryan. He laughed bitterly, and there was actually a glimmer of tears in his eyes. Sarah, do I need to remind you this is our marital home? You're actually asking me to keep quiet in my own house for some shameless homewrecker. What do you take me for? Seeing the teenager on the sofa starting to stir, I didn't think twice, immediately grabbed 30-year-old Ryan's hand. Don't talk here, come on. I'll take you to the coffee shop downstairs. Afraid he'd break free, I deliberately gripped his hand tightly. But unexpectedly, not only didn't he resist, he instinctively gripped back. Even after we left the elevator, Ryan didn't let go of my hand. I felt awkward and tentatively tried to pull my hand back, but he held it even tighter. What your boy toy can touch you, but I can't, Sarah. You can betray me without hesitation, but now you're staying pure for him. I couldn't stand the mockery in his voice, and forcefully pulled my hand away. Don't project your disgusting thoughts onto me, especially when you're the one who's dirty. Ryan flinched as if I had slapped him. The streetlights outside the coffee shop cast harsh, jagged shadows across his face, highlighting the deep exhaustion around his eyes. For a split second, I saw a flicker of genuine pain, but it was quickly swallowed by the arrogant, defensive armor he had worn for the last year. Dirty, he repeated, a hollow laugh scraping the back of his throat. Right. I'm the monster, because I sought out someone who actually looks at me with an ounce of respect instead of constant disappointment. Bella made a mistake, I made a mistake. It was one night, Sarah. One night when I was drunk and drowning in the fact that my wife couldn't be bothered to show up for me. So you brought her to my hospital, I said, my voice dropping to a dead, flat calm. You took her to my clinic, used my prenatal appointment slot, and paraded her in front of my colleagues. Was that a mistake too, Ryan? Did you trip and accidentally fill out the intake forms? His jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, but the words died in his throat. Before the heavy silence could settle, the bell above the coffee shop door violently chimed. The glass door swung open with enough force to crack against the brick wall. Both of us snapped our heads up. Standing in the doorway, chest heaving, his dark hair a messy halo from the winter wind, was 18-year-old Ryan. He wasn't wearing a coat. His knuckles were white by his sides, and his eyes, God, his eyes, were blazing with a pure, unadulterated fury that I hadn't seen in over a decade. Let go of her, the teenager snarled. 30-year-old Ryan scoffed, dropping my hand but stepping slightly in front of me. A protective, territorial instinct that made my stomach turn. Or what, kid? You should be careful how you speak to adults, especially the husband of the woman you're sleeping with. The younger Ryan didn't even blink. He walked forward with the reckless, invincible gait of an 18-year-old who had nothing to lose and everything to protect. He stopped barely a foot away from the man he would become. I said, the boy whispered, his voice vibrating with rage, step away from my wife. Older Ryan froze. A condescending smile was halfway formed on his lips, but it shattered as he finally, truly looked at the boy standing in front of him. The dim cafe lighting washed over them both. I held my breath, watching the horrific, beautiful realization dawn on 30-year-old Ryan's face. He saw the exact shape of his own jawline. He saw the faint, jagged scar above the left eyebrow from a childhood bike accident. He looked into a pair of eyes that were exactly his own, only entirely devoid of the cynical rot that a decade of corporate greed had built. What? Older Ryan staggered back a half step, the color draining from his face until he looked like a corpse. What the hell is this? Sarah? Who is this? I'm the guy who promised to love her until the day I died, 18-year-old Ryan said, his voice breaking on the last word. And you're the piece of shit who broke my promise. Without a second's hesitation, the teenager pulled back his fist and drove it squarely into the older Ryan's jaw. The sickening crack echoed in the empty street. 30-year-old Ryan collapsed against the side of a metal trash can, blood instantly blooming from his split lip. He didn't even try to get up. He just sat there on the freezing pavement, staring up at the phantom of his youth in absolute, mind-shattering horror. 18-year-old Ryan stood over him, breathing heavily, tears streaming down his face. If I had a knife right now, the boy sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at his older self, I would cut my own throat just to make sure you never live long enough to do this to her. Ryan, stop. I lunged forward, grabbing the teenager by the shoulders. His body was rigid, radiating heat and adrenaline, but the moment my hands touched him, he crumpled. He turned into my arms, burying his face in my neck, crying with the loud, ugly, unrestrained agony of a boy whose entire world had just been burned to the ground. I held him, my own tears finally falling. I looked down at 30-year-old Ryan. He was touching his bleeding lip, his eyes wide, frantically darting between me and the boy. The sheer psychological terror of facing his own untainted conscience was breaking him in real time. Sarah, he choked out, reaching a trembling hand toward me. Sarah, please, what is happening? Am I losing my mind? You lost your mind a long time ago, Ryan, I said softly. Monday morning, the courthouse. Don't make me wait. I turned, keeping my arm tightly wrapped around the shaking boy who loved me, and walked away into the winter night. We didn't go back to the apartment. I couldn't bear the thought of older Ryan following us up, couldn't stomach the scent of the marital home that now felt like a mausoleum. I hailed a cab and took us to a quiet, upscale hotel near the hospital. Once we were in the room, 18-year-old Ryan sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at his bruised knuckles. I went to the bathroom, soaked a towel in warm water, and came out to clean his hand. He flinched as the damp cloth touched his skin, but then his fingers relaxed, gently tangling with mine. I bought her a ring, he whispered to the carpet. I paused. What? Right before I ended up here. He finally looked up at me, his eyes bloodshot and swollen. I worked 3 part-time jobs all semester. I ate ramen every day. I saved up $400. It wasn't a diamond, it was just this stupid little sapphire with a silver band, but I was going to give it to you for our anniversary. I was going to tell you that the second I graduated, I was going to marry you and that I would never, ever let you cry. A sob tore through my chest. I pressed my face against his hands. I remembered that ring. I kept it in a velvet box in my jewelry drawer for 12 years. Older Ryan had bought me a 3-carat diamond for our 5th wedding anniversary, but it was the tarnished silver sapphire I wore on a chain around my neck on the days I needed comfort. I'm so sorry, Sarah, he cried, pulling me off the floor and onto the bed, wrapping his arms around me as if trying to shield me from the very future he had created. I'm so sorry I became him. I hate him. God, I hate him. It's not your fault, I murmured into his chest, inhaling the scent of cheap soap and clean cotton, the smell of the boy who used to wait for me outside the medical library at 2 a.m. with a thermos of hot cocoa. You are not him. Not right now. We fell asleep like that, fully clothed, clinging to each other like survivors of a shipwreck. The next morning, my phone was blowing up. There were 42 missed calls from Ryan and 7 frantic texts from Bella. I ignored all of them. I got up, quietly, so as not to wake the exhausted teenager sprawled across the bed, and went to the window. The city looked gray and indifferent. I had a shift at the hospital in 2 hours. Life brutally had to go on. When I stepped out of the shower, young Ryan was sitting up, watching the news on the muted TV. He looked older today. The manic energy of the teenager had settled into a grim, dark determination. I'm going to fix this, he said quietly as I dried my hair. There's nothing to fix, Ryan, I sighed. The divorce papers are drawn up. No. He stood up, walking toward me. I'm going to fix him. I'm going to find out how I became that piece of garbage. Because yesterday, he said something. He said Bella made a mistake. He said it was one night. If he's a corporate shark who doesn't care about you, why was he crying on the pavement? Why did he look like the world was ending? I stopped toweling my hair. He's manipulative. He was shocked. I know myself, Sarah, he said, tapping his chest. Even if I'm 30, even if I'm corrupted, I don't give up. And I don't cry unless I've lost everything. I'm going to find out what really happened with this Bella woman. I wanted to tell him to let it go, to just let the marriage die peacefully. But looking into those fierce, determined eyes, I couldn't stop him. He needed this closure, just as much as I did. While I went to the hospital, 18-year-old Ryan took my spare keys and went back to the apartment. My shift was a blur of charts, rounds, and the sterile hum of the ICU. Work had always been my sanctuary, the one place where the chaos of my personal life couldn't touch me. But today, my mind kept drifting to the collision of my past and present. At 3 p.m., a nurse tapped my shoulder. "Dr. Wilson, your husband is here. He looks terrible. He's in your office." My stomach dropped. I marched down the corridor, mentally preparing to call security. I pushed open my office door. The words of eviction already on my tongue, but they died instantly. 30-year-old Ryan was sitting in my guest chair. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie was gone, and the right side of his face was a swollen palette of purple and blue from where his younger self had struck him. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "Get out," I said, leaving the door open.
"Sarah, please."
"Shut the door." His voice was a rasp, broken and desperate. "Just give me 5 minutes. If you want me to sign the papers after that, I will." I hesitated, then kicked the door shut. 4 minutes. He swallowed hard, wincing as it pulled at his split lip. I thought I was hallucinating last night. I thought the stress had finally cracked my brain. But I woke up today, and I remembered everything he said. I remembered the sapphire ring. I remembered the exact words he said to you. He dropped his head into his hands, pulling at his hair. It made me realize how far gone I am, how completely I've destroyed us. So I went back to the penthouse. I went back to Bella. My posture stiffened. I didn't want to hear her name. "She wasn't pregnant, Sarah," he whispered, the words dropping like lead weights into the quiet room. I stared at him. "What?" He looked up, his eyes bloodshot and swimming with unshed tears. "I demanded a paternity test. I told her I was divorcing you, but that I needed medical proof the child was mine before my lawyers drafted the alimony and child support." She panicked. She tried to stall, but I tore her bathroom apart. "I found the pills. She's been taking hormones to mimic the symptoms of pregnancy. The ultrasound she showed me was printed off the internet. The prenatal appointment. She brought me here specifically to make sure you saw us, to force your hand into divorcing me because she knew I would never actually leave you." A heavy, suffocating silence filled my office. "And the night we slept together?" Ryan's voice cracked. "I was blackout drunk after that gala you didn't attend. I woke up in my clothes. She was in the bed crying, saying I had forced myself on her. She threatened to go to the board, to the press, to destroy my company unless I took responsibility. I panicked. I felt so guilty, so disgusted with myself. I moved out because I couldn't look you in the eye. I pushed you away because I thought I was a monster." He slid out of the chair, falling to his knees on the cold linoleum floor of my office. The arrogant, untouchable CEO was gone. He was a broken man, weeping at my feet. I was a coward. I was so consumed with my ego and my company that I fell into a trap. But I never stopped loving you, Sarah. Not for a single second. Please. Please, I'm begging you. Don't throw us away. I looked down at him. 10 years of history, of shared dreams, of late-night whispers, and building a life from nothing. A year ago, hearing this would have felt like salvation. I would have dropped to my knees with him, held him, and we would have fought Bella together. But as I looked at him now, all I felt was a profound, hollow exhaustion. "Stand up, Ryan," I said quietly. He looked up, hope flickering in his desperate eyes.
He slowly got to his feet.
"You didn't sleep with her," I said, my voice steady. "You didn't get her pregnant. You were manipulated and blackmailed." He nodded frantically.
"Yes."
"Yes, Sarah, I swear. But you still chose to lie to me," I interrupted, the calmness of my own voice surprising me. "You didn't come to me, your wife, your partner, and tell me you were in trouble. You chose to protect your pride and your company over our marriage. You moved out. You left me alone for a year, wondering what was wrong with me. You let me cry myself to sleep. And when you thought she was pregnant, you paraded her into my hospital, knowing it would humiliate me." The hope drained out of his face, replaced by a sickening realization. "You punished me for your own guilt," I continued, stepping closer to him. "You let her answer the door in a slip dress on your birthday. You let me think I meant nothing to you. The boy you used to be would have come to me crying the very next morning, and we would have faced it together. But the man you are now? You built a wall of cruelty to protect your own ego." "Sarah?" He sobbed, reaching out for me. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice hardening. "The truth doesn't change anything, Ryan. It just changes the flavor of the betrayal. You didn't cheat with your body, but you cheated with your heart, your trust, and your loyalty." Monday morning, the courthouse. I walked past him and opened the door. "Get out." He stood there for a long moment, looking at me like he was seeing me for the last time. Because he was. Without another word, his shoulders slumped, and he walked out of my office. A hollow shell of a man. When my shift ended, I walked out of the hospital into the biting cold. I expected to feel devastated. Instead, I felt light. For the first time in a year, the invisible weight pressing down on my chest was gone. Hey. I turned. Standing by the hospital entrance, holding a steaming cup of milk tea, was 18-year-old Ryan. He was smiling, but there was a strange, translucent quality to his edges, like a photograph left out in the sun. My heart skipped a beat. Ryan, what's happening to you? He looked down at his hands, which were faintly shimmering, the streetlights visible through his skin. I guess my job here is done. I went to the penthouse today. I found out about the fake pregnancy before he did. I left the hormone pills on the kitchen counter for him to find. You did that? I asked, taking the milk tea from him. Our fingers brushed, and he felt cold, slipping out of reality.
Yeah.
I couldn't let him keep thinking he was a complete monster, but I also couldn't let him keep manipulating you. He shoved his hands in his pockets, leaning against the brick wall. I heard what happened in your office. You really gave it to him. I did. I smiled softly, though tears pricked my eyes as I looked at his fading form. Are you going back? I think so, he nodded, looking up at the winter sky. I think the universe just broke for a minute, because 30-year-old me had buried his conscience so deep, it had to physically rip itself out and come back in time to save you. He stepped closer to me. He was fading faster now, his voice sounding like it was coming from the end of a long tunnel. Sarah, listen to me, he said, his eyes urgent and bright. When I go back to my timeline to being 18, I'm going to try to do it right. I'm going to try not to lose myself. But if I do, if the universe is fixed and you have to live this out without me. He reached out, his translucent hands cupping my face. I could barely feel them, just a warm, ghostly pressure. Don't ever let a man make you feel like you aren't the center of the universe, he whispered. You are brilliant. You are beautiful. You don't need me, and you certainly don't need him. Promise me you'll be happy. A tear slipped down my cheek, falling right through his thumb. I promise. He smiled, the breathtaking, arrogant, utterly devoted smile of the boy who had loved me first. God, you still smell so good. Beef without cilantro tonight, okay? Okay. I choked out with a laugh. And then, with the gentlest gust of winter wind, he was gone. I stood alone on the pavement. The world was quiet. I took a sip of the warm milk tea. It was sweet, comforting, and perfectly hot. Monday morning came with a pale, clear sky. I arrived at the courthouse 10 minutes early. I wore a sharp crimson coat, my hair pulled back, my favorite sapphire ring sitting cool against my collarbone. Ryan was already there. He looked entirely broken. His bruises were fading into sickly yellows, and he had lost weight. When I approached, he didn't try to touch me. He just looked at me with an agonizing sorrow. Bella is gone, he said quietly as we waited for our lawyers. I fired her, sued her for extortion, and blacklisted her from the industry. It's over. Good for you, I said neutrally. He looked down at his hands. He's gone too, isn't he? The boy. I didn't answer him. I just watched the courthouse doors. I had a dream last night, Ryan whispered, his voice cracking. I dreamed I was 18 again. I dreamed I bought you a silver ring, and I swore to myself I'd never care about money or status as long as I had you. Waking up this morning, realizing I killed that kid, it was the worst pain I've ever felt. He looked at me, tears spilling over his lashes. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry I killed him. He's not dead, Ryan, I said softly, turning to look at him one last time. He's just somewhere you can't reach anymore. The lawyer approached, handing us the final papers. Ryan stared at the signature line for a long, agonizing minute. His hand shook. But finally, conceding defeat to the ghost of his past and the reality of his present, he signed his name. I took the pen. My hand didn't shake at all. I signed my name in fluid, decisive strokes, severing the bond that had defined my entire adult life. When we walked out of the courthouse, we stood on the steps. We were supposed to go our separate ways now. What will you do? He asked, looking at the ground. Work, I said simply. Live. Eat beef without cilantro. A sad, nostalgic smile touched his lips. Take care of yourself, Sarah. You too, Ryan. Try to find him again. I turned and walked down the steps. The winter sun was bright, blindingly clear, cutting through the frost of the morning. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had the warmth of an 18-year-old boy's promise locked safely in my heart, and an entire, unwritten future stretching out beautifully in front of me.